Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host, Brett
Gilliland. Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisor.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I am your host, Brett Gilliland. Today, I've got Nick Hutchison with me. Nick, what's going on?
Brett, I'm excited for the conversation. Can I ask you question number one?
You may.
What is your favorite book of all time?
Ooh, what is my favorite book of all time? I always tell people The Rhythm of Life by Matthew Kelly. That is my favorite book, and it was a book I got recommended, probably 12 years ago, maybe, and it was a game changer for me. So that would be it, The Rhythm of Life by Matthew Kelly. What do you think?
I love it. Here we just. Oh, I haven't read that book yet. I do own a Matthew Kelly book. It's not that one, and it was a book that I had read a number of years ago. But I love to hear it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great book, man. So check it out. So you are the force behind Book Thinkers, and people that listen to this podcast, they hear me talk about, every day reading 10 pages minimally. That'll get me around 24 to 25 books a year, which I know I just interviewed somebody yesterday and he had read 85 books. I'm like, okay, I feel like a total schmuck now. But anyway, 24 to 25 books a year is pretty good for me. But anyway, that's what I like to do. Our people connected with your people, and now here we are. So if we can, before we dive into all this great stuff, Nick, I always ask the question is, what has made you the man you are today?
Well, I was not much of a reader growing up, which would surprise that can see the background. So I've got like 1,000 books behind me and I read about 100 books a year.
Wow.
When I was going into my senior year of college, I took an internship at a local software company, and my boss at the time, he recognized that I had about a 1-hour commute each way. And he said to me something like, Nick, listening to the same playlist, the same music for the 1,000th time, like it's not going to get you closer to where you want to be in life, but the right personal development podcast might. And so that's how I started. I started by listening to podcasts. And what I noticed was that so many of the successful people being interviewed, they gave at least some credit for their success to the books that they were reading. And so that's what made me the man I am today. I started consuming personal development books. I started reading about every problem I had, every skill I wanted to develop. I started reading about the world's best at everything: health, wealth, relationships, and I started implementing something from read. Here I am about 10 years later, 500 books in, and you can't stop me now.
That's awesome, man. It's true. I call it Windshield University. It's, we have so much time in our cars, whether you're commuting or driving, whatever you're doing, let's get another university. Let's get another degree. Right. And so I think it's huge. So here's my question for you on the, you've read 100 books already this year. I think you said is, how are you doing that, number one, and how are you committing the time to it with a busy schedule?
Well, I like to start by asking people this. So sometimes people will tell me like, hey, I can't read. And I love to say, if I paid you $10,000 to read a book by the end of the month, do you think you could do it? And they're like,
yes.
Well, I could read 5 in that case. And so it's not a question of whether or not we can read. It's a question of whether or not we value it enough to prioritize it on our calendar. So for me, not only is it my full-time job now, which helps me to promote books for authors, but I value it. I value it more than Netflix, more than social media. I value it more than a lot of things that other people spend their time doing. I'm always looking to serve my future self. I'm always looking to remove pain and solve problems. I'm looking to develop skills and get closer to my potential. So that's how I'm able to prioritize it and find so much time. And just like you talked about, 10 to 20 pages a day, that's 25 books a year, even for a beginner. So yeah, it's a great way to make it happen.
Yeah, because I hear people all the time when I talk about my 10 pages thing, like, oh, I don't have time, but I think you're right, it's a priority. So I have it, whether it's in the middle of the day, I got to get it in. Usually it's first thing in the morning. It's about one of the first things I do. And so I've just made it a habit. And I think that we've got to. And the things that I've learned, and even the thoughts that come into my mind about something, whatever is going on in my life in that situation, this thing I'm reading over here will help fertilize that, right? And you just add some water to it, and then that thing starts to grow. And for me, it's thinking, it's journaling, it's spending time on it. So I'm curious, because one of your passions and one of the things I wrote down in here is your new book, Rise of the Reader, which comes out November 1st, plug intended. We'll talk about that later. But you really dive into strategies for mastering your reading habits, but then also applying what you learn. So I'm curious on how we do that. How do we apply what we've learned when we read every day?
There are so many different strategies for application that we can talk about, but I think it all starts in the early stages of your reading process. So for me, one of the things that I found myself doing that most other people don't do is I set an intention for each book that I read. And my intention follows the SMART goal framework. So it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's relevant to my life, my relationship, so I'm emotionally connected, and it's time bound. So one of the books that a lot of people are reading right now in the world of business is titled $100 Million Leads by Alex Hormozy. And it's a book on lead generation, and they're just hoping that it's going to change their life. And so instead, I say set a SMART goal. Set an intention for the book, something like find and implement at least 2 lead generation strategies for my business by the end of October. And then review that intention each time you read a few more pages so that you can tell your brain what to filter for. Find and implement at least 2 lead generation strategies. Now you'll be able to accurately identify them within the book, and the book can help you solve your problems. I think it all starts with setting an intention and have that intention focused on taking action.
Yeah, I love that, because that's what we do with our clients. You know, we're in a wealth management space, and it'd be like us saying, hey, just come in and we're just going to start saving money with no intention on where we're going and no goal. That would be crazy, right? And so I've never really thought of it that way, is to have an intention for the book. I'm a big highlighter, right? I like to highlight the books. I like to read the actual book, not like on my iPad or something like that. And so how do you, for people that maybe don't have that discipline built today, they're not doing the 10 pages, they're not reading 100 books a year, what advice would you have for them to take action and start making it part of their life?
Yeah, I would say pause for 5 minutes before you start the book. And at this point, you should know what the book is about. And set a goal. Set a goal to implement at least one thing from the book. So by the time you're finished with the book, you've highlighted a few potential actions that you can take with your highlighter, just like you talk about. And look at those actions. Write them down. Rewriting your favorite takeaways is a form of repetition, and repetition leads to retention. So look at these potential takeaways and say, which one of these is going to lead to most of the change that I'm looking to create? And take action on it. There's a Napoleon Hill quote that I love. It says, action is the real measure of intelligence. It's not sitting back and debating things and having a great vocabulary. It's the person who chooses to implement what they've learned, creates a behavior change, turns it into a habit, and then wakes up as a wildly different person 10 years from now. And so that's it. Just one thing from every single book that you read.
And are you writing those down? Are you a writer downer guy? Are you a journal guy? Like how are you doing that?
Yeah, so typically let's say I read a book on lead generation, using that example, and I've set an intention to find and implement at least 2 things. I'll probably have 15 potential. So at the end of the book, I go through and I reread those 15 things that I highlighted, and I will rewrite all of them into a list. And I'll say, here are the potential actions that I can take. What 20% of these will create 80% of the change that I'm looking for? The highest leveraged activities. Not every activity is created equal. And then I detail all this in the book. It would get a little bit complicated to try to explain, but I have an activity tracker that I will plug those activities in, and I'll set a goal to implement that by the end of the week or in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And so it gets rewritten into a second place. But yeah, I think that writing with a pen in your hand, it's multisensory, it's visual, you can feel it happening. And again, repetition leads to retention. So you want to rewrite it a couple of times, once on paper, second time into my tracker.
Yeah. So if we're not reading, would you call yourself a big goal planner? Just again, eliminate the reading side of this thing. Are you a huge goal planner?
I would say yes. I have been over the last 10 years. I'm probably a little bit less today than I was. But no, you know what? No, scratch that. Yes, I am.
Define that. How are you a huge goal planner?
Well, everything's quantified in my life. And I will say that doesn't sound fun, but Jocko Willink said it best. Discipline creates freedom. Discipline equals freedom. And so by defining my goals in my activity tracker for every week, and my goals are related to everything, not just business. So goals around health and the gym and fitness and diet, goals around my relationship, certain number of date nights every week, etc. Goals around my business and my personal finances and things like that. Everything's quantified because without measurement, you don't know if you're making progress. You have to understand your and where you're at. And so I set goals, incremental improvements. I set annual goals for my business and we track against them. I mean, I have all sorts of goals. So yeah, I'm definitely a goal planner.
Yeah. I love it. What have you learned about disappointment slash failure slash swinging and missing, all that stuff from the business world? We talk about success all the time on the circuit of success, but let's talk about the circuit of failure too, because I know for me some of my toughest times have been my best learnings. So what are some of those that you feel like sharing today?
Well, I've learned that the US public education system has it backwards because when I was younger, I was taught that failure was a bad thing. I was taught to avoid failure,
Yep.
avoid criticism, and I was never really coached, right? But then I started playing sports. And in sports, when you make an error or you have an issue or you miss a block or whatever, your coach comes over and tells you how to handle it better next time. And I think that's what happens in business.
Right.
Fail and you iterate, you make progress. And so I've learned that failure is the best. Failure is amazing. If you fail fast and you fail hard at full speed and you're always changing direction and iterating, like that's where the magic happens. And, that's why my business has grown so much over the last couple of years.
When you look at your growth and you look at talking about the funnels and the leads and all that stuff, I mean, one, branding's important, but number two, how are you getting out there and making sure people are seeing your stuff? Like what's the secret sauce in there, if you will, to help people learn from you and how you've grown your business?
Yeah, we do about 1 million organic impressions a month on Instagram right now. And it's because we create valuable content. I think that's the hack. You have to be of service
Yeah.
and you have to provide value to your audience. I mean, on top of that, I'm networked with a lot of names in the space. And so I sort of borrow their credibility and I display that in front of my community. And, they're re-sharing content and we're providing value to them. So that kind of helps a lot. Getting in front of an audience that's already been created that sort of mirrors your audience is a good way to
Okay.
make that happen too.
Yeah. I saw that you had people on your podcast, Grant Cardone, Lewis Howes, Alex Hormozy. I mean, those are some big names.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just try to provide value to those guys and then in return, try to get in front of their audience a little bit as a result. And they all have big audiences and they spend a lot of money to build those audiences. So it's a great way to get in front of more people.
So what you asked me about my favorite book. I'll ask you that question here in a second, but I find myself, if I'm not engaged in a book, I committed in April 2016 to start reading cover to cover because I was the guy that had the book on the nightstand. I'd read 20, 30 pages. I was kind of bored. And then it would stay in the nightstand for a while. Then it goes in the drawer and then you never see the book again, right? And I'm like, I'm done with this. I got to read cover to cover. So I find myself sometimes struggling with reading a full book if I'm not totally engaged with it. And I still do it, but it takes me longer than I should. And that's probably why I don't read more books. So what is your process like with that? If you're 40 pages in and the book sucks, in your opinion, what are you doing with it?
There's a great rule called the rule of 100. So it says, take the number 100, subtract your age, and that's how many pages you have to read before you can put down a book. So for me, I'm 29. I have to read at least 71 pages before I can put down a bad book. It's just a rule, a framework to make sure that you kind of stay consistent. The older you get, the less you have to read because the wiser you have become. So I think about it like that. I think life is too short to read a bad book and to force yourself all the way through it. I used to read cover to cover every single word. I realized like I'm not optimizing for finishing a book. That's not the goal. The goal is to implement something. And if this book isn't going to be it for me, like I thought it was going to solve a problem and it's clearly not going to, like I've given myself the space to move on these days.
Yeah. I like that. So I got to read 55 pages in a book basically before I give up on it.
Yep. There you go.
That's about where I'm at anyway. I'm 45, so 55, we're good to go. Yeah, but then it's like, man, it sucks. I want that book. I put them all on my bookshelf. I've got them labeled to the year they are, and I want to read it cover to cover. And now I just wasted my time. And I'm competitive, and I like to check the box that I've read that book. Any good apps? Any good apps that you recommend people use to help with reading, or like meaning tracking it and keeping score?
I've actually tried to build some in the past because I don't love any of the ones that are currently out there. Better. I'm not a fan of Goodreads, not a fan of Readwise, not a fan of any of the book summary applications. But for note taking, I do use Evernote. So I think Evernote's a great platform for categorizing my favorite takeaways from some of the books that I've read. My use of the platform has gone up and down over time, but yeah, that's a great app. And then, for in general, for making sure that you read, just set a daily reminder. Like if you're waking up at 7 and you want to get your 10 pages done in the morning, just, hey Siri, set a goal for reading 10 pages every morning and remind me at 7 a.m. or whatever. And those little nudges will help you be consistent.
Yeah. I use the app Basmo. Have you heard of that one?
No.
Yeah, so let me confirm that. That's what it is on my phone here. So it is called, Basmo, Basmo. It's like a yearly fee, but you put all your books in that you're reading, and it'll tell you what percentage you're at of having it done. You basically set your timer when you start, when you finish. You talk about what page you're on, and it will tell you, how many words per minute you're reading, how many pages per minute you're reading. It'll tell me, hey, based on this speed of reading, you'll finish this book in 2 hours and 17 minutes. And then it's just got a library of all the books I've read this year, which has been kind of cool because you can look back on it and you can take pictures, you can write notes. So I found that to be pretty helpful. I like that. So maybe you could just take that idea and then build your own, and then we'll sell it on here. Everybody will use it. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll look that up, Basmo. I'm surprised that I hadn't heard of it before.
Yeah, I don't even know where I heard about it, but I've been using it for probably 6 months, and I really like it. What are the habits? If I would follow you, besides, again, reading, if I follow you around with a camera every day, what am I going to see? The no-miss moments, successful business owner, impacting a lot of people. What are you doing day in and day out?
First thing I do when I wake up is I walk outside and I get some sunlight. And that's with my dog. So we go on a walk. Most mornings, it's a 45-minute walk. There's a trail near my house, and we get some fresh air. We get the blood moving, we drink water, and we get sunlight before caffeine. Then we go home, he gets fed, and we go to the gym. So my wife is with me too. We go to the gym, we exercise. And I think it's important to get those exercise endorphins flowing before your day gets kicked off. So I focus a lot on strength and mobility right now. Flexibility has been important for me. And then I come home, do a 20-minute transcendental meditation in front of my red light. Like, it all sounds kind of funny, but I'm one of those guys that's really into biohacking and routines and everything like that. Shower, caffeine, reading, and then my day starts around 10 a.m. With a huddle that I have with my team every day. So those are the things that I don't miss every single day of the week, and they're all the kind of like foundation things for my energy. I also don't eat until 12 o'clock. So I practice intermittent fasting normally once a week, or a couple times a month. I'll do a longer fast as well. So I'm into all of that stuff. I think energy preservation, energy optimization, those are some of the things that I focus on with my routines.
Yeah. So what are you learning about the red light? I've been debating on one of those. I've got a sauna at home, and I was thinking about putting one of those in my sauna. I've got the lights and all that stuff, but it's not the true red light therapy. So, what are you liking about that? And do you actually feel any different? Or are you seeing anything different with that?
I've been using it daily for about 6 months, and I will say that I'm in the gym every day. Sometimes I'll tweak something, or a muscle will be sore. Time is slightly fast. Some benefits as far as skin and stuff like that. Like it'll stimulate collagen production. I haven't noticed anything with my skin, but that's supposed to be a long-term benefit. And yeah, I have a sauna in my house too. We're not as good at getting the sauna session in every day as we could be. We normally sauna on the weekends, but and then during certain seasons, more winter than anything, we're cold plunging. So yeah, I do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That cold plunging never gets easy, man. It's freaking terrible, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And I'll tell you what though, like I enjoy cold plunging. So I just have a tub outside and I fill it with
Yeah.
Epsom salt water and we clean the water every so often. And in Boston, it gets really cold. So there's a great period of time for like 3 months where the water sits at 33 degrees. There's a layer of ice on
Right.
top and you got to get in for a few minutes. And like, I love it. I really do love it.
I love that you love it because it's like I love it too. Like once I get out and once the initial shock, and I don't know if I'm sure you've done this, but I actually videotaped myself getting in it one time and just I never thought I could make facial expressions like that in my life. I'm like, this is hell. This is exactly what hell has to be like, other than it's hot, not cold. But it's just brutal. But again, it is the one thing. I was just having this conversation with somebody the other day. It is the one thing where I feel drastically different when I'm done. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Your endorphins are through the roof and your dopamine spikes and it lasts for a while. Like feel like $1,000,000. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. What is the thing if I were to steal your cell phone from you, is there anything in there that, besides the normal music, email, stuff like that, calendar, but is there anything, app or any kind of hack thing that you use to be productive and live your best life on your phone that you wouldn't want me to delete?
Yes. I have an app called One Sec. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
Okay. So I'll demonstrate it live for you. So it basically stops any impulse use of social media. So when I click Instagram up on the
Yep.
screen here, watch what happens. It says, oh, it's time to take a deep breath. It makes me breathe in. Then it makes me breathe out. And it says, hey, you've tried to access Instagram 19 times in the last 24 hours. And then it makes you press the button. Do you actually want to use Instagram or do you not need
Wow.
it right now? And so it stops the impulsivity. Like oftentimes I'll click it when I'm just waiting in line for something. And then I'll be like, you know what? No, I don't need Instagram right now. And so that
Oh,
saved me a heck of a lot of time.
so on One Sec, so that is like basically an overlay on your phone. So is it any app or is it just the ones you kind of pick and choose which one to do?
Yeah, it's any app on your phone, and there's tons of other rules. So there's actually an app that comes pre-installed with iPhone, but most people delete it. Let's see. It's called, I forget where I tucked this thing. It's called man, Shortcuts. And so
Oh
this
yeah,
app
I know
one sec
exactly what you're talking
integrates
about.
with Shortcuts, and you can integrate one sec with any other app. So like, and then you can determine how long the break is, and there's all sorts of rules. So the one sec app has a tutorial in it about how to set it up with any app, and that's what I do.
I love that. That's a game changer, man. I'm gonna get that, and the Gilliland boys are gonna get a new app installed on their phone. And so when they see they've tried to get on TikTok for the 900th time in the last 24 hours, right? That this will make them take a deep breath and rethink if they actually want to do that. So. That's awesome, man. What talk to us about the journey, the grind, man. What do you love about it? What do you dislike about it? What can you share with our listeners there?
Well, I love everything about it. I really do. I mean, failure is part of the process, struggle is part of the process, and when you expect it to happen, it doesn't surprise you.
Yeah.
So, what do I try to optimize for? I want to enjoy the passage of time. And for me, part of that is failure. Part of it is growth. Part of it is friction. It's being uncomfortable. And so I enjoy it. Like I expect it. And as a result, it happens. And it doesn't surprise me. I'm just out here loving my life. I'm out here building, having fun and positively impacting people. And those are the things that I'm optimizing for. So, I use these books like a cheat code, like a shortcut I mean, they condense decades of somebody else's lived experience into days of
Yeah.
consumption. And, I joke around. I'm not 29 years old. I'm thousands of years old if you include all of the books that I've read. So, yeah, that's the magic.
So talk about this book, Rise of the Reader, man. It's coming out November 1st, 2023. Talk to our listeners about this book. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I just, over the years of building my community on social media, I've received the same questions thousands of times. Like, how do I choose the right book? How do I take great notes? How do I retain more from the books? How do I implement more from the books? And so what I did was I documented my entire process, every little detail, from how do I choose these books to how to implement it, how do I track that behavior. So it's all in the book, Rise of Reader. And again, if you choose to read this, you'll get more from the other books that you're reading. That's the promise.
I like that. And where can our listeners find more of it?
Yeah, if you go to Book Thinkers, so spelled just like it sounds, Book Thinkers on Instagram, that's our most active community. Like I said, we do about impressions a month over there, and that's where you can connect with a ton of cool people. And then from there are links in the bio to the book and to our websites and everything else.
So Book Thinkers, go in there now. We're going to do we're going to have a little fun. There we are. All right, we're going to play a little game here. Pick a number between 1 and 10.
7.
All right, now between 1 and 3.
2.
All right. It says this book helps you develop and implement, and it's Atomic Habits by James Clear. So talk to us about that. What made you make that post right there?
Well, I don't manage our Instagram channel anymore, but Atomic Habits has sold 10 million copies since it came out. Clearly, people have an issue controlling their own behavior, and so they're looking for habit creation, how to undo bad habits, how to install good habits. And Atomic Habits is the best. I mean, James Clear wrote a very simple, actionable book. Almost everybody that reads it finds something of value in it. And I think, like, there's a great quote from the book that I've always remembered. James says something like, every action you take today is a vote for the person you're becoming. And so if you want a different future, to take different actions today, you have to change your votes. And that book will help you do it.
I love that. I mean, you got a lot of people I follow on here. You got like 27 mutual followers. So that's it's good stuff. I like this. Talk about fears, man. How many of the fears you've put in your mind have actually blown up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
None of them. I think we spend a lot of time. Yeah, we spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time creating fake stories and amplifying fake situations that never come to fruition, and that holds us back in a big way. So, yeah, when I was younger, I had a lot of social anxiety. I had a lot of fear. I even had fear in sports when I was growing up, and none of it ever came to fruition. But the more you grow and the more uncomfortable you are, the less uncomfortable you become. I think, like, through exposure, you become desensitized to things that previously created fear. So, yeah. And again, I think failure is part of the process. So you can't let it surprise you. And failure is so beautiful. Like, it's so optimistic because it teaches you what not to do. And that gets you a little bit closer to what to do. So, yeah.
But what do you say to that person that's listening to this right now and they're like, whatever, man, you're full of, whatever, Nick, it's not beautiful. It sucks. It's, I don't know if I'm going to make, I just had this happen today, a business owner. It's like, man, I laid in bed all night last night. I'm in this spot, he's stressed. He's thinking about some stuff financially. And, so that guy probably isn't going to agree in that moment when you're up all night and you're stressed out that it's beautiful. It's easy to say, and I agree with you. So I'm not saying I don't agree with you. But how? How does it become beautiful? How do you, when it does suck really bad in the moment, how do you get out of it and try to spin that thinking to where it's beautiful?
I say a couple of things. Oftentimes we think that our pain is unique to us. But the reality is about 100 billion people have lived before us, 100 billion, history of humanity. Millions of those people have documented their life experience in the form of a book. So they've condensed decades of lived experience, everything they did to overcome their problems, and they put it all in the book right there for you. Thousands of those books are probably related to the same problems that that person is facing today, your client.
Yeah.
And so if you can slow things down, realize that it's not unique to you. Everybody goes through this. But the roadmap, there is a solution. Other people have found a way to solve this same problem, the financial anxiety, the scarcity mindset, whatever it is. And if you can spend $20 in a few hours of your time and slow things down, you can avoid dealing with that for the rest of your life by reading and implementing the right book. Said another way, if you deal with something on a daily basis, over the next 30 years, you'll deal with it 11,000 times, 365 times 30.
Mm-hmm.
So spend the next 100 days figuring it out so that the next 10,900 days, you don't have to deal with it. I would say be more logical, less emotional, like talk about these facts. Yeah, it does stink. Like I've been in a lot of bad situations with business where I didn't know if I was going to make payroll or whatever. Now I think when those situations pop up, I just have the experience of having gone through it so many that it's just like, this is part of the problem. Other people have it worse. Like they say comparison is the thief of joy. I think comparison creates joy when you look at people that are in worse circumstances. So I use that tool a lot as well to kind of slow things down.
Yeah, I think that's great perspective, man, and great wisdom, actually. Because I agree. When I started this podcast 6.5 years ago, I've asked that question to 300 plus people, right? I mean, the fears you put in your mind blow up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be. Most of them do exactly what you did. You smile, you say zero. And for me, that's built this massive belief that the fears I've put in my mind over my lifetime, I can say none of them have come true, right? And I can also say the 300 plus people, the hundreds of books I've read, you're learning from that, man. So like the podcasts you read, the people you surround yourself with, the books you read, those things.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I know our internet connection is going in and out a little bit. But
yes, it is. Sorry, I don't know why that is.
I mean, yes. All good. Yes, absolutely. And I read a book a number of years ago called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. And she was an end-of-life palliative care nurse, meaning she would spend the last couple of weeks or maybe days with somebody before they passed away, talking with them, helping them transition. And she realized that everybody dies with a ton of regret. And the number one regret is essentially living a life based on other people's expectations of them instead of their own, like playing a smaller game, not taking risk, ending up wishing they had. And I just won't accept that for myself. Like, I think the pain of regret hurts a lot more than the pain of fear or being uncomfortable in the short term, right? Like, in order to live my dream life, that's just that it's part of the process. Like it happens. Everybody faces it. So for me, I would rather avoid regret, but be uncomfortable in the short term than like have this permanent regret of not doing more with my life, you know?
Yep. Well, I've said this for years too, is regret weighs tons, discipline weighs ounces, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So I also talk about our attitude defines where we go. Our discipline decides how fast we get there. And so, and you mentioned it earlier about discipline, right? So, however, how much more discipline we can get, I don't know, man, but it's for me, it's put it on your calendar, schedule it, make things happen, take action, but also be clear about where you're going, right? Have clarity about your plans and your future. And sometimes it's easier to find that discipline. So, again, you asked me this question to start with, but I'll ask you now. So what are your favorite books? Top 1, 2, 3 books you'd recommend for people?
The book that's had the biggest impact on the life that I live today and the joy that I experience on a daily basis is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. That book helped me really design my lifestyle. I have a remote business. I travel internationally a lot. I've spent time in 25 different countries over the last 5 years with my wife, sometimes for up to a few months at a time. I have a remote business that has 10 people on the team, but everybody's in a different location. And it's all a result of that book. Book number 2, $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy, added an additional 6 figures of revenue to my small business, which is pretty significant. And it's all offer creation and sales, essentially. And then The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy is book number 3.
Yeah.
Small steps in the right direction over a long period of time. That's the name of the game. So when you talk about fear, there were a couple points where I wanted to maybe mention just bite size. Like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. No matter how many times you read Aesop's fable, The Tortoise and the Hare, the tortoise always wins. Like, small steps. And small steps create less fear than big steps do. So I don't have huge goals, but I have manageable steps in the right direction in front of me, and that's where I find most success.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. At 29, here I am 45. And so when I was in my 20s, I was, I had these huge, big goals, and I was always chasing them. And it was funny because then I found sometimes when I hit those goals, I'm thinking the bells and whistles and the confetti's going to fly down, and it doesn't happen, right? And I found that I would beat myself up if I didn't do that one thing, even though it was a massive, massive deal. And I would end up still having a great year and a great success and have built a good life. And so I found as I've aged, and you're doing it now at 29, so I applaud you for that, is taking the baby steps. I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go from 0 workouts to 7 workouts a week. I'm going to do that. And then I would do like 3, and then I'd beat myself up over it, right? And just constant struggle. So I applaud you on that, man. And for our listeners, I would agree. It's finding that bite-sized deal that you can accomplish and do and feel good about your success.
Yeah, process matters so much more than outcome. And so I just want to enjoy the process and make sure it's sustainable. And I know that it will compound into exactly what I'm looking for in the future anyway.
Yeah, I love it. So where do our listeners find more of Nick Hutchison, man?
The best place to go is at Book Thinkers on Instagram, which we highlighted once before. And from there are links in our bio to everything that you're going to need. Awesome.
Well, we will put this in the show notes, and it's been awesome having you on the Circuit of Success, my man. Stay with me while I hit end here, but just thanks for joining us. Sorry about the internet connection today. I don't know what's going on there, but I love the stuff. I had a page of notes here, man. I loved it.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.